You sent it today.
Yes, it was
Maluta.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. There are still some people joining, but I think we'll probably start soon. Colleagues, can you confirm that you can hear me and see my screen?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Thank you, Gary. All right, so welcome everyone. Many thanks again for joining us today in this online workshop organized by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. You'll hear about two initiatives today. The first one is the Air Quality Management Exchange Platform, or AQMx. My colleague Gary and I will give you more detail on this. And then for the second half of the online workshop, we'll have a presentation from my colleague Jimmy on the Africa Cleanup Program. So I will ask everybody to please mute their microphones during the workshop. If you have any question, please put them in the chat. And my colleague Jimmy and I will be happy to help if there are any technical issues during this workshop. Thank you. So first, before we dive in, I'll give a quick introduction of the CCAC, so the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, which is a global and voluntary partnership that was funded in 2012. At the moment, we have 91 country partners and 89 non-state partners who are active members of the coalition. The objective of the CCAC is to mitigate what we call short-lived climate pollutants, mainly methane, ozone, black carbon, and HFCs, in an integrated approach, fighting at the same time climate change and air pollution. We deliver on this objective through high-level advocacy, but also through robust science and providing support to government in terms of national planning and sectoral mitigation. I'll give you just a brief overview of the CCAC engagement in Southern Africa. So we have the Comoros, who are members of the CCAC since 2023. Eswatini is a member as well since 2018, with a project underway on the development of an emissions inventory and recommendations for a low-carbon livestock sector. We also have Madagascar, who joined very recently the partnership in 2024. Malawi, which is also a member since 2023, and Zimbabwe, a CCAC partner since 2018, with a project focusing on strengthening the country NDC and on including methane. My colleague Jimmy, who is online, is our country engagement expert. And so if you have any follow-up question on how countries can actually join the CCAC, I'm sure we'll be happy to answer you. So now I'll go straight into the first topic of today's workshop, which is AQMx. So the Air Quality Management Exchange platform. You can find it online at aqmx.org. Before presenting in more detail the platform, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on why the CCAC developed AQMx. And the first piece of background is this needs assessment report that was published in 2023 by the Clean Air Fund and UNEP. And so as part of this needs assessment report, more than 100 air quality managers from all around the world took part in interviews and focus groups. And the objective was to better understand their needs and challenges in terms of accessing air quality management guidance. And maybe some of you today were actually part of those interviews and focus groups. So this report found three key findings. The first one is that air quality managers told us that the lack of capacity and lack of access to technical knowledge was the second biggest barrier that they were facing in their job as air quality managers. And this comes only second after lack of access to funding. The second key finding is that the delivery of guidance, in order to be more effective, needs to be harmonized, accessible, and facilitate cross-learning. I'm sure you all know here that air pollution is a very cross-cutting and cross-sectoral issue. And so if we aim to address it in an effective way, it's very crucial that we do not think in silos. And the third key finding was that there are still remaining gaps in terms of the guidance that is available to air quality managers. And so we need to work on expanding and strengthening the guidance to address those critical gaps. And of course, the guidance that is being provided needs to be adapted to different contexts and different capacities. Air pollution is very context dependent. Sources vary a lot from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And so it's important to tailor the guidance that we can provide to air quality managers. The second piece of background I wanted to share was that the CCAC recently launched its Clean Air flagship for the period 2024 to 2026. And the objective of the flagship really is to raise ambition and catalyze action for clean air. We have several objectives under the flagship. The most relevant for us today are to support and strengthen regional and multi-level governance, cooperation and capacity on integrated climate and clean air management, but also to provide capacity support to member countries on data on implementation to effectively clean the air. So in 2024, one of the key activity under the Clean Air flagship was the launch of a knowledge platform for air quality managers, which is actually AQMx. And last but not least, and I'll stop here on the background information. So in March 2024, the UN Environmental Assembly adopted a resolution calling for the promotion of regional cooperation on air pollution to improve air quality globally. And as part of this resolution, among other things, member states mandated the UNEP CCAC to develop an updated global online platform for information sharing on air quality management. And so on International Clean Air Day of 2024, the CCAC Secretariat delivered on this mandate by launching AQMx. So really, what is our objective with the platform? First, it's really to provide a one-stop shop for guidance and information on air quality management. And AQMx is designed as a platform which can act as a trusted resource for air quality managers worldwide, with the end objective to support them in the implementation of effective clean air policies and in meeting the WHO air quality guidelines and associated interim targets. So here I really want to highlight that AQMx was a collaborative process and that the CCAC Secretariat has been working with its partners to harness the collective knowledge of the clean air community. So we've been working very closely with members of our Clean Air Task Team, as well as with an air quality managers focus group, which was actively engaged in reviewing the curated guidance that you'll find on the platform. We really want to keep this collaborative mindset in the future phases of AQMx because it's key for us to ensure that the guidance we provide is actually relevant and answers to the needs of air quality managers on the ground. We'll be working to expand AQMx, especially by adding new functionalities that will allow for users to engage in knowledge and best practice sharing through communities of practice and through regional chapters on the platform. So what can you find now on AQMx? If you go to the website, again, it's www.aqmx.org. You will find two key components. The first one is the curated guidance. So it's really 10 steps that air quality managers can take in those 8 key areas of air quality management. Of course, air quality monitoring, but also source attribution, emissions inventory, health impact assessment, sustainable development benefits assessment, decision support, public engagement and communications, and legal framework, policy design and implementation. If you go on the platform now, you'll see that for each of those 8 air quality management areas, you'll find 10 basic steps that you can take as an air quality manager to get started in air quality monitoring, for instance. So here I'd like to stress that the curated guidance we have developed so far is targeting what we called stage 1 jurisdiction, meaning countries or cities who have limited previous engagement in air quality management and limited capacity. So maybe you'll find that this guidance is actually not relevant to your current context and your current capacity, but I really want to highlight again that we will be expanding the curated guidance, addressing other stages of engagement in the course of this year. And now the second key component you'll find on AQMx is the resource exchange library. So at the moment, you'll find more than 800 resources online. Those resources are trusted, reliable, and up-to-date. They come from CCAC partners, experts, key stakeholders in the clean air community. And of course, this library is designed to evolve over time. And so as new knowledge products become available, they will be uploaded on the AQMx online library. Again, any suggestions for additional resources are welcome. So if you know of any reports or case studies that are relevant to your own countries or own jurisdiction and that you can't find on AQMx at the moment, please feel free to get in touch. and we'll be happy to expand the online library with your help. So I'll conclude this first overview of the platform by giving you some information on what is coming next for AQMx. So first of all, as I was saying, we are going to be developing the curated guidance for air quality management for further stages of engagement. So our objective is that by the International Clean Air Day 2025, we'll have stages 2 and 3 ready to be published. And then by the next year, we'll be working on stages 4 and 5. We'll also be working on the development of sectoral guidance targeting key emitting sectors. And for this curated guidance, either the air quality management guidance, but also the sectoral mitigation policies guidance, we are going to be working closely with a group of experts that was established specifically for AQMx called the Technical Advisory Group. But we'll also be working closely with the Air Quality Managers Focus Group that I was mentioning earlier. And if any of you is interested in joining this group and supporting the development of the guidance by providing review and input, again, you are more than welcome to get in touch. So this year we'll also be organizing training outreach workshops like the one we are doing today at the regional or sub-regional level, and we'll be working on developing those regional chapters I was mentioning earlier. So this is the overall, the overview I wanted to give you on AQMx. And now we'll have a more practical session where my colleague Gary Clayman is going to guide you through the AQMx platform and demonstrate how you can use the curated guidance and the resources in the online library to address specific questions that you can ask yourself as an air quality manager. So we'll be showing the website live. You can either follow on the screen or you can go on the website yourself and follow the steps that Gary will show you. Gary, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Juliette. And again, really appreciate everybody taking the time to join. We have a fantastic turnout from the Southern Africa region. That's very exciting. We are hoping that this tool will be useful for air quality management practitioners around the world. And as Juliette indicated, we're actually, for these use cases, we're going to highlight both aspects of the AQMx platform. We're going to use two examples, one on monitoring and one around identifying control costs. But there are so many different aspects to air quality management and air quality management planning that we're sure you're going to find this tool to be useful and relevant for all kinds of questions. And when we get to the interactive session, we'll be looking for additional use cases that you guys might have in mind. To start with the monitoring example, we want to make sure that we can highlight both features. As you see on the AQMx homepage, there's both curated guidance and the resource exchange library. So if you were to have questions about, just as an example, citing an air quality, a reference grade air quality monitor, how do you choose a site? What are the factors that you want to think about? We want to highlight both the curated guidance and the resource exchange library for how you would get information on that. So starting with the curated guidance, if you were to select air quality monitoring as an aspect of air quality management that you're interested in, you see very quickly that you can go to the air quality monitoring page where it first steps you through a definition of what are the different stages of air quality monitoring, what should a jurisdiction be thinking about at each stage of air quality management. So you can self-identify whether you're in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and if you go down below that stage table, you find 10 steps that are relevant to stage 1 jurisdictions who are interested in air quality monitoring. And notice that step 3 has information about identifying potential sites. So this is where one could find information about siting and indeed, while there's a range of resources available here when you start clicking through information about siting, for example, Appendix D of the EU directive provides, more general guidance. Appendix D, sorry, of the USA Clean Air Act, but also network design criteria and information from the EU on their directive. I want to focus today on Appendix E of the US Clean Air Act, which has specific information on probe and monitoring path siting criteria for ambient air quality monitoring. And when you go to that resource, you download it, you open it up, you'll find a bunch of information about siting. And while, as I mentioned, the other resources have general information about the different types of, middle scale, micro scale sites, urban, residential background sites, different types of sites that you would establish. Here, what you see in section 2.1 is for those different types of sites, what do you have to think about in terms of horizontal and vertical placement of an air quality monitor, like an inlet? How high above the ground should it be to be free from interference? If you scroll down a bit, it has other information about how you want to space a monitoring site from minor sources. Is there garbage burning nearby? Is there a local factory that could interfere with your site? So this gives you information on what you want to do to make sure that you avoid that kind of interference. Section 2.3 talks about spacing from obstructions. You want to have representative monitoring. So you want it to be representative of the local area, depending on whether it's a micro scale site or a neighborhood scale site or a highway site. You want to make sure that you're able to represent the sources that you're trying to monitor. And you want to be free from things that would restrict airflow, such as, against the wall of a large building. You're not going to get a representative sample if you put an inlet right up against a building that's blocking airflow and preventing you from getting a representative sample. So all of this information, spacing from trees, spacing from roadways in section 2.4, 2.5. So all of this information is provided here. And then, as I said, I'll end it there on this use case in terms of the curated guidance, but there were other resources that give you additional information. So this is just to show you that the curated guidance, if as you read through it, you'll find specific information about the questions you may have around air quality monitoring siting. And I'll turn it back over to Juliette to highlight some of the features of the Resource Exchange Library, where you can get more information. If your question isn't answered in the curated guidance, we have a range of other resources that might be helpful.
Thank you, Gary. So to show you how you can use the Resource Exchange Library to find the content and knowledge products that you need. So this is the homepage for the AQMx library. You'll see here that you have a range of filters that will help you really drill down and access the specific knowledge product or reports that you need. So for instance, under AQM activity type, you would select air quality monitoring, and this will give you access to all the reports, articles, tools, guidelines on the website that relate to air quality monitoring. If you're interested in having access to guidelines for monitoring, you can click on the resource type for guidelines, tools, and models, and then you'll find several guidance reports on air quality monitoring, for instance, from Clean Air Asia, from the US EPA, but also from UNEP. If you go down a bit further, you'll also find, for instance, some guidance on aerosol measurement by the World Meteorological Organization, with very detailed and practical recommendations for PM monitoring. Now, if you're looking for online training resources on air quality monitoring, again, you can select in resource type the online training and resources category. And here you'll find a range of open source and available training material on the issue of air quality monitoring. And again, if we're taking this example of how to cite a PM reference grade monitor, you could find this lecture, this online lecture on the sampling and analysis of PM 2.5 in ambient air. So this is to show you how you can best use those filters on the left-hand side of your screen to access the guidance you're looking for. And of course, you also have a search box here. So if you have any specific keywords, that can also help you with your search. Over to you, Gary, for the second use case.
Right. So the second use case that we want to highlight today, and there are several use cases we could go through, but I know time is limited. The second use case that we wanted to talk about is related to understanding the control costs. If you have a strategy in mind, a policy that will reduce emissions for air pollution, and you need to understand what the costs are, well, we tried to incorporate that as well. So in the curated guidance, there's a category called decision support. And if you go to the decision support page, once again, you find a stage table telling you what our decision support is and what are the various aspects of different stages of decision support where a jurisdiction can figure out sort of roughly where they're at. Then below that, there are steps that will be useful for, helping to generate the information, make the case for policies or programs. And among the steps that one would take is to understand a lot of the input data that would be needed for decision support tools, various tools that can estimate the implications of undertaking a policy, what the costs are, what the results will be in terms of air pollution. So understanding things like the energy balance for your jurisdiction, residential energy consumption, understanding your jurisdiction's waste sources, transportation sources, agriculture. And then at step 7, understanding the costs of clean technology that may be specific to your jurisdiction. And here, while we talk about some of the decision support tools that can help you to understand the implications of different policies, you'll see that we don't have a lot of information available on costs. And this is where we can use your help. If you know of additional resources that we can include both here and in the Resource Exchange Library, it would be really valuable. We do have a US EPA resource that the cost tool is available on the US EPA website, or was available on the US EPA website. Haven't looked today. And it provides generic information on costs of control for various types of control technologies. In terms of local costs, because we recognize that many regions around the world, they want to know what the cost will be in local currencies, not just what it costs in Europe or in the US to control things. So there is one resource that we found for the India energy transition, and in that resource, if you were to click through, open it up, and look at it in one of the UN languages that makes, well, it's available, I think, in a couple languages, I don't know, but English is the one that I have looked at. We're trying to make all of these resources as multilingual as possible, but often it depends upon the person who published the original report. But if you go to, for example, page 8 of this resource, it has information on the types of technologies that are used for controlling various pollutants from industrial sources. Again, this is relevant to India. And the thing of use, I think, for this use case is on page 9, table 4, has the average cost of control. We can get, down to page 9, the bottom of page 9. There are actual costs in Indian rupees. for some of those same technologies that were specified a couple of pages earlier. So, gives you local costs for scrubbers, for low NOx burners, etc. So again, we're acknowledging that this resource right now may not have as much information as you would like to see, especially in locally specific, regionally specific detail. We hope to improve on that, and it's going to be a community effort. So to the extent that you know of resources specific to the costs of control in Southern Africa, that would be really useful for you to share with us. We can get those resources into the curated guidance as an illustration, and more importantly, into the reference exchange library. And here I'll again pass it back to Juliet to show you what kinds of resources are available in the resource exchange library, which again are kind of limited for costs of control, but we hope to strengthen that as we build out the stage 2 and stage 3 guidance this year. So Juliet, you want to talk about the reference exchange library or resource exchange?
Thank you, Gary. So again, if we find ourselves on the resource exchange library, you can select under AQM activity type the decision support filter here. As Gary mentioned, this is one of the areas where really we are lacking knowledge products. So again, any suggestions are very welcome. So under decision support, if you were to select the guidelines, tools, and models box here, so you'll find a range of models that you could use. So the GAINS, for instance, models that Gary was mentioning, the LEAP tool developed by the Stockholm Environment Institute, as well as some tools developed by C40, such as Pathway AQ and Aqua. You could also have access to this guide on the cost of inaction of tackling air pollution. This was developed by YASA, initially for the Asian and Pacific region context, but there might be some interesting methodologies that you could use for your own context. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, again, under the decision support section, there is a regional filter that you can use. So for instance, here we can select the Africa filter, and you can see that we have some case studies, some cost-benefit analysis studies on road transport interventions, for instance, on fuel quality, on non-motorized transport. And we also have some resources on the waste management and the economic impacts associated with it. Most of those resources are for Ghana and Nigeria. We do have a study concerning South Africa by the ICCT. And again, if you know of any such study related to your specific country, we'd be more than happy to hear it. So I'll stop here for the demonstration of the website. Again, if you have any question, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll just have a look, and I don't see any outstanding question. And so now we will move on to the next part of our workshop, which will be much more interactive. So we will actually be looking to hear from you and from your experiences, your current priorities, needs, challenges as air quality managers. So you can see on the slide here, we'll be using a website called Menti. So you have two ways to access it. Either you can scan the QR code with your phone, and so you'll be following the rest of the session on your phone. And if you would rather stay on your laptop, you can go to the website indicated on the screen and use the code that you can see here. Again, if there are any technical questions. So I see in the chat that somebody can't see my screen. Jimmy, can you confirm that my screen is shared?
I can see the screen good right now, Juliette.
Okay, thank you. So again, any question, please drop them in the chat. And we'll now move to this other part of the workshop. Is everybody online on the Mentimeter website? Okay, so we'll get started now, and just to start, a very open-ended question. We'd like to know more about the daily challenges that you face as air quality managers. So just a quick and easy question. There are no wrong answers. You can just share the current challenges that you are facing in your day-to-day activities. Finance, of course, access to funding, it's definitely a big one. Other challenges from participants?
And Juliet, while people are entering their biggest challenges into the Mentimeter, I just want to mention that the purpose of this is to assist us as we build out stage 2 guidance and stage 3 guidance during this calendar year and stage 4 and stage 5 guidance next year. Having an understanding of what air quality management practitioners are facing, what challenges they're facing, and what use cases later in the Mentimeter, we're going to be asking you about specific use cases like the ones we showed. We can tailor the guidance as we develop it to really meet the needs of either regionally specific questions that are coming up or sector specific questions that people are really facing as challenges. So having all of this information is going to help us to develop the guidance to be more responsive to what the challenges you're facing. So really appreciate all this input.
Yeah, and I think we can see here that, well, capacity and technical capacity is a big one. Funding and access to finance, of course, really stands out. And we do see a lot of issues surrounding data and data quality, data management, availability of reliable data. So that's, yeah, very interesting to know. And I also see some points being made on procurement and procuring monitoring equipment, which can also be a complex task to undertake as an air quality manager. Thank you everyone so much for taking the time to participate. This is very enlightening. Yeah, obsolete legislation.
And again, for example,
also,
what this is suggesting to me, sorry, Juliette, but this is suggesting that as you heard in our roadmap, we are planning on building out sectoral guidance during either late 2025 and 2026. And some of that sectoral guidance, maybe we need to think about having sectoral guidance around finance. That was one of the ideas that had been floated. And it does seem like, how to finance clean air programs may be something where we need additional guidance. So that's very helpful. And the procurement piece, again, very important. We can build that into the stage 2 and stage 3 guidance, some detailed specifications on how to go through procurement. So super helpful.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll now move to our second question. So for this session, we'll really focus on the air quality management guidance, and then we'll have another range of questions on sectoral mitigation policies. So here you can see the 8 areas of air quality management that we have listed on AQMx. Again, monitoring, emissions inventory, source attribution, and so on. We'd like you to rank them by the order of areas where you think you need the most guidance. So is it really, is your focus really on monitoring, and is this really the area where you feel that you lack the most capacity, or is it more on decision support, legal framework? I mean, again, no wrong answers. We're really interested to hear more about where you think your needs in terms of guidance are the most important. And again, as Gary was mentioning, this will be very helpful to us as we go about expanding and developing AQMx guidance in the future. So health impact assessment ranks first for now. We have air quality monitoring second, emissions inventory third. Maybe, Gary, we could define a bit better what we mean by sustainable development benefits assessment, because I feel that this area is very wide and can be a bit confusing.
Yeah. I mean, we have, health impact assessment and health benefits are very clear, and I think people understand what that is. But there's a range of other multiple development benefits that come along with clean air, including ecosystem services, clean water. So it's some of these other environmental benefits, but also benefits such as, when you move to clean public transit, you can often reduce traffic mitigation and congestion relief. So reducing traffic congestion, that's another benefit, a sustainable development benefit that, comes from the activities that clean the air. So essentially, it's estimating the multiple development benefits that come with clean air, but mostly with a focus on environment. And similarly, decision support, maybe people don't fully understand what we mean there, but it's really, how do you justify these clean air programs? So it's, cost benefit analysis, cost effectiveness analysis, understanding from the perspective of a decision maker, how would you justify a clean air program? So, they're all different aspects of air quality management planning that you need to pay attention to. But it definitely seems like folks are challenged making the case from the health perspective, or that is an effective means of justifying programs. So health impact assessment is something we'll make sure to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think we can see the ranking moving, but definitely health impact assessment, monitoring, and emissions inventory rank very high on people's priority. And again, this is so useful and interesting to us. So thank you very much. And we'll move to the next question, which is really related. So we'd like to understand a bit better the type of guidance or the type of question that you are being faced with as air quality manager. So for instance, when you say that you need more guidance on health impact assessment, what exactly does that mean? Is it access to input data? Is it knowledge and capacity, or on the tools and methodologies that you use to do a health impact assessment study? Similarly, on emissions inventory, what's the biggest challenge? Updating the emissions inventory? Is it knowing which tier you should be using? So any detail that you can provide would also be helpful in designing the guidance.
Please. That's 5 minutes.
So we can see again issues of quality control, quality assurance apply to emissions inventory. Data again is a big issue. Data validation, data analysis, funding as well, and monitoring. The technical skills needed to maintain a monitoring network, which is, yeah, another big issue to address. Again, data verification capacity, buy-in from the public. That's an interesting point that we haven't mentioned so far, but of course, public engagement, communication is going to be key as you implement clean air policies, and getting social buy-in from the population also comes with raising awareness on the impact of air pollution is of course going to be key. So again, I'll just ask everyone to please mute their microphone. Thank you. For emissions inventory, the issue of relevant emission factors, also emission factors that are actually relevant to your region, your country, is also a key issue. Yeah, we can really see a big focus on data and access to data. Okay, that's great. Thank you, everyone. Again, very useful training, capacity development. We also see some answers that are more related to sectoral mitigation guidance, anything related to implementing low emission fuels, for instance, is something that could be addressed within this sectoral mitigation guidance that will present a bit later. Okay, thank you, everyone. In the interest of time, again, I will move to the next question. And so now we'll do a bit of a deep dive on the sectoral mitigation policies. As I was saying a bit earlier, we are looking to develop this sectoral guidance, but we're also trying at the moment to really identify which sectors should be the priority. So it's also important and interesting to us to hear what you think are the priorities in terms of sectoral guidance for air quality management. So the next question that we have here for you is, again, to try to better understand where your priorities stand in terms of sectoral mitigation, is if you could please rank those emission sources according to which is the greatest concern in your jurisdiction.
So this is really surprising to me, Juliet, because having done some work in South Africa, industry is not a surprise at all. Industry is clearly one of the areas where I know people are very concerned with emissions, but I'm really surprised that household energy is as low as it is, because we were finding that household energy and emissions from residential combustion were a much larger concern in South Africa. But this is really interesting to see.
Yes, again, the rankings are moving a little bit, but we really see a focus on industry, transport, and waste as being key priorities in terms of sectoral mitigation. With agriculture ranking very low as well. Interesting. So now in the same line of thought, we'd like to understand a bit better what type of policies are being implemented in those different sectors and whether those policies are effective or not in addressing pollutant emissions. So again, you'll find the same sectors: agriculture, household energy, industry, natural sources, power, transport, and waste. And just give us an assessment of how effective those policies are at actually reducing pollutant emissions. Yeah, and we see in the chat that for waste management, waste burning is one of the key problems. And yes, absolutely, that's an issue. The CCAC is working on the issue of waste burning and especially organic domestic waste. Yeah.
And it's interesting that industry and transport, power generation, where people had, issues and concerns, that's where people see more effective policies being implemented.
Yeah, and similarly, we see that agriculture, waste management rank pretty low. Those are also diffuse sources, which can be harder to address that point source sources such as industrial facilities or power generation. Okay, so we'll move to the next one. What would you say the greatest barrier to implementation? We've already mentioned a few. Of course, funding, finance is key, but there also can be knowledge barriers, enforcement barriers, awareness barriers, and also the lack of political will. So against your assessment of where the greatest barriers stand, is quite interesting to us. And we see again that access to funding definitely stands out. Yeah, so access to funding and also political will coming second. That's also interesting to us in how we could expand the decision support guidance in the future, how we could help and support air quality managers in making the case for ambitious clean air policies and really convince decision makers on the relevance and necessity of clean air policies. And that can be for health impact reason, but also with a very robust cost-benefit analysis, and again, highlighting the cost of inaction on clean air. All right, thank you, everyone. So now we'll we'll conclude this interactive session with a very open-ended question. Gary and I showed you 2 use cases for AQMx, so how to cite a reference grade monitor and how to estimate the cost of a control program. And so now, based on the presentation that you saw, we'd like you to share with us some of your own AQMx use cases. So really, what are the concrete practical questions that you are dealing with as an air quality managers, and whether or not you can find the answers to that question in AQMx. Again, this is useful for us as we develop further the content of the platform, both in terms of resources being uploaded on the library, but also in terms of developing additional guidance.
And these use cases can be, it doesn't have to be limited to just a sector or a specific, policy that you're trying to address, but it can be aspects of, how do I get inventory information? How do I do source attribution to, or cost information? All of the different aspects of air quality management that come into play. What are you facing as a challenge or a barrier where guidance would be useful to help your agency overcome that barrier? All of these can help us as we build out the stage 2, stage 3 guidance to better articulate guidance that's useful for practitioners. And the more specific you can make these use cases, the better, because, for example, in terms of monitoring, somebody mentioned monitoring for flaring. That's a use case that we would not necessarily have thought of. So it's very useful to have some of these aspects brought in so that we can make sure that some of the guidance or some of the resource exchange library resources target those more specific questions.
Yeah, some very interesting points being made on the first question on how to better assess air quality climate co-benefits. This is, of course, absolutely key. We know that air quality and climate change are very much interlinked. Most of the time you will see co-benefits, but there are also areas where you will actually see trade-offs. So it's very important that you're able to really pinpoint those climate and clean air co-benefits. And again, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is really trying to do just that. I see another interesting point on guidance on the use of local sensors. So if you go on the air quality monitoring guidance now, you'll see that we actually don't mention local sensors. This is not to say that AQMx will not address the issue. This is to say that for the air quality monitoring guidance for stage 1, really the key recommendation is that air quality managers will first start with establishing a reference grade monitoring station. And that is really the key foundation of any monitoring network, producing reliable data. And then as curated guidance for monitoring is being developed for further stages, the issue of local sensors, how to best use them, how to make sure that the data you get out of them is actually reliable and actually actionable for policymakers will also be integrated into AQMx. All right. So I think we'll stop here the session on AQMx. Thank you again so much, everyone, for your active engagement. This has been very useful and insightful for Gary and I and the team. I will now leave the floor to my colleague Jimmy, who will present to you another key initiative of the CCAC under the Clean Air flagship, which is the Africa Clean Air Program. Over to you, Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Juliet, and good afternoon, everyone, colleagues. I will try to be brief in my presentation for the sake of time. And again, it's really glad to see that we have a good audience today and a lot of engagement. I think it's a great sign for the intel shared from the Mentimeter earlier that we all want to advance the clean air agenda in the SADC region through our respective work. So for this part, I'm going to speak about the Africa Clean Air Program, which is an initiative that works hand in hand with AQMx that were referenced earlier. I am noting specifically the technical guidance that was shared. So we are looking forward to work directly within countries, cities, or institutions to apply best practices in air quality management. So I think that is worth to mention first for us, especially wondering why we need to connect the AQMx and the Africa Clean Air Program. So to best speak about the program, it is worth making a bit of a rewind and check what it stands for, who is supporting it, and what have been the action backstage that led to the program. So when we speak about the Africa Clean Air Program, we always go back to the integrated assessment of air pollution and climate change for sustainable development in Africa. It was developed by CCAC and co-developed with Stockholm Environment Institute, the UNEP Regional Office of Africa, and the Africa Union Commission that specifically emphasized the role of the Agenda 2063 of the AUC, which is called the Africa We Want. And right there, we wanted to connect the integrated assessment with official documents that were published by the African Union Commission. And this document right here emphasizes strong links between air pollution, climate change, and economic growth. And one of the ultimate recommendations that were provided by the assessment is the development of the 37 mitigation measures that were distributed among the 5 key sectors, which are transport, industry, agriculture, waste, and household energy. And all those sectors are directly connected to the different sectors that were also mentioned earlier in the survey that we just shared. And the measures also emphasizes a strong link between the reduction of emissions of PM2.5, black carbon, and methane, and also by improving health and food security. And in terms of benefits, the application of the 37 measures will prevent hundreds of thousands of deaths in Africa and improves crop yields and mitigates climate change. And also, one of the key recommendations is the implementation of a platform or a program that really requires regional cooperation, strong policies and investments in clean technology. And that's why we have the Africa Clean Air Program right now. Can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, thank you, Juliette. So it is also worth mentioning that within the assessment, we had a special chapter on the assessment of the situation in all of the regional economic communities. So our experts right here developed a sense of urgency in terms of what are the different scenarios if we are considering applying the 37 measures and if we are considering applying the recommendations from the Agenda 2063 of the African Union Commission. So right here, there are sets of climate and health benefits, especially for the SADC region, where it is expecting that there will be climate drying mitigation that will be strong in January between March, under the Agenda 2063. And in terms of health benefits, we are speaking about 12,000 fewer deaths per year from PM2.5 pollution by 2030 under a scenario called LCCP mitigation scenario. And if we're speaking about the scenario of the Agenda 2063, we're expecting 47,000 fewer deaths per year. And in terms of agricultural gains, the Agenda 2063 will provide more benefits in terms of crop yield. Right here, we are speaking about 1% for rice, 4% in maize, and 8% for soy yields if we compared it with the reference baseline scenario. Next slide, please. And right here, it just shows the timeline of the Africa Cleanup Program. So early 2022, we were able to publish the Integrated Assessment of Air Pollution and Climate Change for Sustainable Development in Africa. And then September that year, that same report was picked up by the AMCEN. And the AMCEN noted the completion of the Integrated Assessment of Air Pollution and Climate Change for Africa, and really urge all countries to really go forward with the Africa Cleanup Program. And then the following year in November, it was also picked up on an African Union level by the 5th Ordinary Session of the African Union STC, or the Science and Technology Commission. And right here, the African Union Commission was urged to lead collaboration with the regional economic communities. SADC is, of course, part of them. And the African Union member states to mobilize financial and technical resources to facilitate the development and implementation of the 37 measures that were recommended into the assessment. And the AUC also was urged to collaborate with all assessment partners, including the CCAC, to really support the African Union member states in undertaking integrated modeling, but also in integrated national plannings and actions on the ground that goes in line with the Africa Cleanup Program. And last year, in August, on the margin of the 12th Conference on Climate Change and Development for Africa, the African Union Commission was officially endorsing the Africa Cleaner Program in front of a lot of stakeholders, but also they were able to define some sense of pillars of the Africa Cleaner Program. And the following month, in September 2024, through the Ministerial of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, one of our partners, Nigeria, was announcing a $1 million USD funding for the Africa Cleaner Program. And that funding will be solely dedicated to implementing actions within champion countries and cities. Next slide, please, Juliette. And in terms of what we are currently doing within the Africa Cleaner Program, so right now we are in this process of developing a continental roadmap that will be endorsed on an African Union Commission level. So to do that, we have a coordination team in place where all partners that help develop the integrated assessment are still working hand in hand. So we have the CCAC, the Stockholm Environment Institute, the UNEP Regional Office of Africa, and the African Union Commission on board for that. And we have regional experts that support us in reviewing existing air quality standards in the region that are relative to the WHO guidelines. And they are also doing a benchmarking exercise to see the different gaps between air quality policies, but also implementation and actions. And of course, they are also doing an assessment of a regional agreement and recommendation to update through regional consultation. And in line with that, we will have a virtual meeting where we are going to share a sense of the benchmarking exercise that we did with the regional nodes. And of course, we want to secure buy-in from relevant stakeholders, and all people attending today will receive an invite to that. And last, in the development of the continental roadmap, we are also doing a revision of policy brief for the 5 target sectors that were developed under the assessment. So the sectors are transport, residential, energy, agriculture, and waste. And we also want to outline recommendation that would feed directly into the continental roadmap so that we have an implementation plan that can be directly implemented by countries, but also cities. And then in the next slide, right now, we are looking forward to strengthen institutional capacities among relevant stakeholders, but also partners, including the African Union Commission, but also the sub-regional commissions or the RECs. So we really want to work hand in hand with the RECs because there is an assumption that once you work directly, for instance, with the SADC Secretariat, it is really easy to work with countries that are under these commissions. So we want to implement, for instance, a national consultant that will work directly within the Secretariat of the SADC to advance implementation of the continental roadmap and to coordinate with the different member states. And we also want to keep enhancing coordination between the assessment partners, CCAC, AUC, the UNEP Regional Office of Africa, but also we want to look beyond. We want to integrate regional economic communities and any relevant stakeholders in Africa that wants to be on board on the Africa Cleaner program. So here we are thinking about adding research institutions, but also the private sectors and any other stakeholders engaged into air quality management in Africa. And then we also want to operationalize air quality arrangement. And for that, we also want to work in close collaboration with the regional economic communities to work towards strengthening regional air quality regulations and standards, which will include the different sectoral measures from the integrated assessment, but also since we are speaking about the sectoral guidance on AQMx, that is also one part of the tools that we will integrate right here. And last, we are looking forward to work with champion countries, but also champion cities. Can you go to the next slide, please, Juliette? Yes, right here I mentioned we want to work with champion countries. So basically, since we will have a continental roadmap and an implementation plan, we really want to make sure that actions are being taken on the ground. And since I mentioned earlier, we received the $1 million funding from the CCAC Ministerial last year, we really want to move forward to implementation that really can integrate relevant measures into NDCs and sector policies. We are also thinking about developing and strengthening air quality legislation on the ground and air quality monitoring plans. There are also a lot of requests on capacity buildings, on how to use the different data from the different sensors. So that is one option that we really see as part of the CCAC as well, and as part of the Africa Cleaner program. And of course, we also want to have this sense of initiative on a city level. So we want to work in champion cities in collaboration with relevant stakeholders. It could be a research or academic institution. And we want to make sure that we build capacity among air quality managers, including the use of the AQMx that was referenced earlier by Juliette and Gary. And all in all, that is the presentation for the Africa Cleaner program. So again, thank you for everyone attending this workshop today. We will make sure to send you a follow-up email so that you can be registered for newsletter so that you can be updated regularly on AQMx, but also on the Africa Cleaner program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for your presentation. We still have 15 minutes available on this call. So if there are any questions on the Africa Cleaner program, on AQMx, or more broadly on the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, please feel free to just drop them in the chat, or you can also just open your mic and take the floor. Any questions? So to answer one question in the chat, yes, we will send the presentation to all participants today. As Jimmy was saying, we will keep in touch shortly. First of all, because as Jimmy was mentioning, there are sub-regional benchmarks being developed under the Africa Cleaner program, and we would very much like to organize another online webinar where we can present to you the results of this benchmark and engage in a discussion with you on what it means in terms of implementation and pilot projects under the Africa Cleaner program. And I'd also like to remind everyone that the Air Quality Managers Focus Group under AQMx is open to all. And again, it's an opportunity for you to take an active role in the review of the curated guidance that will develop in further stages of AQMx, and so your contributions would be also very much appreciated. So my colleague Jimmy and I will leave our email addresses in the chat so everybody can know where to reach out to us, and we'll be in touch very shortly with the presentations. Thank you again, everyone, for making the time today. Thank you for your active engagement, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you. Just before we leave, we do see one question on the use of satellite data. Yes, absolutely. It's an issue we'd like to address in future iteration of the guidance. How can satellite data complement ground-based monitoring networks to provide more air quality data for air quality managers? So absolutely stay tuned, and it will be integrated in the guidance. I don't see any more question. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We'll keep in touch and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.